We're going to be taking a look at this lab, information disclosure in error messages. The description reads, this lab's verbose error messages reveal that it is using a vulnerable version of a third-party framework. To solve the lab, obtain and submit the version number of this framework. So we'll find the vulnerable framework that's running. We'll also take things a little bit further and research the vulnerability itself and discuss the implications against this particular web app. So ostensibly this web app is a shop and it's possible to view products in the shop. And if you take a look at the query string, we have the parameter product ID equals 3. Let's take a look at this in burp. So here in burp, we can see the get request. And one of the things that we can do is try playing around with the parameters to see if we can provoke an error in the web app. For example, if we change this value 3 for product ID to a string, well, the web app is expecting to receive an integer. How's it going to deal with receiving a string? Now, in all reality, this is going to cause some type of error, but it's not really a problem so long as the web app doesn't start disclosing a large amount of information regarding the error itself. Once a web app is in production mode, it shouldn't be revealing verbose error messages involving things that are taking place on the back end. That's really only for developers. It's something that's good on a development server, but should be turned off in production. So if I click send, you can see we get a verbose error message from the back end. We can see that this is a web app that's been built using Java. And the reason we know this is at the bottom, we have the name of the framework, Apache Struts. So this is a model view controller framework for building web apps using Java. And without reading all of the code, we can get a feel for what's going on here. Internal server error, java.lang.number format exception for input string example. In other words, it's trying to cast this string that we've input example as a type number or integer, but it can't do it because it's not possible to convert example to integer. The problem is it's very verbose and it gives us the precise version of the framework that's running. It's Apache Struts 2, version number 2.3.31. Now, to solve the lab, all we need to do is provide the version number 2.3.31. Click OK. If you leave the lab here, I don't think you fully understand the implications of why this is such a problem. So let's take things a step further. So this is the exploit database. It's an important tool for hackers. You can see the URL exploit-db.com, and it's a list of common vulnerabilities and exposures. So if we had an information disclosure, we know the version of software that's running on a web app, then we can actually search for it to see if there are any vulnerabilities associated with that specific piece of software along with the version. Let's just search for Apache Struts. We can see we actually get quite a few results there. So let's narrow it down now by the version number 2.3.31. And you can see we get a couple of results that include our specific version. So both of these matches apply to Apache Struts between version 2.3.5 and 2.3.31. And we can see that that second match is a remote code execution. In fact, both of these vulnerabilities have the same CVE, common vulnerabilities and exposures number. Let's take a look. So we can see it's a remote code execution. In other words, this particular framework allows us to run arbitrary code on the server. It's a very serious critical exploit to do with Apache Struts 2. We can see the Python code, which is going to exploit this particular vulnerability. And furthermore, it's something that we can actually find on Metasploit as well. Let's search for Apache Struts 2.3.31, see which matches we get. Now that is the same exploit that we've just seen on the exploit DB. We can actually type use and type the name of the exploit. We can then type info in Metasploit to get some more information regarding this particular exploit. We have a description there. This module exploits a remote code execution vulnerability in Apache Struts version 2.3.5 to 2.3.31. And also a different range of versions as well, 2.5 to 2.5.10. Remote code execution can be performed via HTTP content type header. So basically it's a critical vulnerability, doesn't require any authentication, and allows remote attackers to execute commands with the same privileges as the user running the web server. In other words, you're in serious trouble if you have this particular version of this framework running on your web app. Now, at the end of the day, maybe we didn't even know that this was running, but as a result of that verbose information disclosure, we were able to get information that ideally we wouldn't be able to access easily about what's running on the back end, which then allows us to look up the relevant vulnerability. All right, that's pretty much it for this lab. Thanks very much for watching. Catch you guys in the next lab.